beginning, right now I'm not even doing what they're calling content strategy. I'm doing information operations, operationalizing information. So it's taking content and data and marrying it together so that you can present it on the fly and give people content with data points, up-to-date data points in them that are automatically refreshed. You can include data visualizations and so on and so forth, and being able to deliver them out to multiple platforms. Like for me, that's exciting stuff.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Content Matters podcast, sponsored by Ingenix. I'm your host, Barb Mosher-Sink. I love hosting this podcast because I get to talk about the importance of content in web and digital experiences. And it doesn't really matter what type of content it is. It's marketing, it's technical, it's sales, it's support. All content matters. Today, we're building on our understanding of content and how organizations can create and manage it effectively with someone who's been involved with it at every stage. Rahel Bailie is the CEO and founding principal of Content Seriously. It's a UK consultancy that helps all types of organizations get a handle on their content operations. Bailie believes that information enablement is critical to digital transformation. And she's worked with a lot of companies over the years to operationalize the delivery of content. She's looked at understanding content challenges from a business perspective to developing content strategies and building content offerings. And she's helped develop content operations from both an editorial and a technical perspective. Bailie joined me on the Content Matters podcast to talk about the challenges related to content, like, why it's so hard to get a holistic view of all content across the organization, and so much more. I can't even start to talk. So let's not waste any more time. Let's get to the conversation. Thank you very much for joining us, Rahel. I really appreciate you taking the time to be with us on the podcast today.
My pleasure.
Do you want to start? Let's start. Just tell me a little bit about your company, Content Seriously. I really love that name and the kind of work that you're doing with your clients today.
Well, okay. Well, I started this company last year because I got the itch to go back into consulting, and I had a company for many years, since 2001, I believe. 2002, somewhere around there, until 2015. And then I took a job in the UK and had actually a couple of jobs, but really, I think I was born to be a serial monogamist in that way. I go into a company, we work out what we want to work out, and then I move on to another company. So Content Seriously, I didn't want it to be anything limited to either content strategy or content design or content operations, because a lot of these things overlap. There's lots of gray areas. What I'm doing right now isn't even called content strategy or content operations. It's called information operations, because we're operationalizing content and data to deliver them into a user interface. So really what I want to do is work with companies who have a content need and they take content seriously.
I think it sounds so exciting in many ways, like and coming from someone who's got a background in working with people around content strategy and content website development, content operations. I really think that it sounds like you're looking at it from a much bigger, broader picture, and I just think that's great, like, because usually it's always so separated into each little category of working with content that you don't actually see too many people who kind of take a whole holistic perspective of it.
I tend to think of it more as the management consulting view of content. So if I were a management consultant at, I don't know, PwC or KPMG or one of those the big agencies, or even at a big digital agency like Sapient or whoever it might be, you are expected to have a business mind and you go in with that idea that I'm here to solve a business problem, or I'm here to help you reach a business goal. And when you think about it that way, you're actually using management consulting techniques.
Right.
And so I'm kind of a management consultant, but instead of doing financial turnarounds, I'm doing content turnarounds.
What made you decide to get into this field? Like, and has it always kind of been that holistic view that you've kind of worked around, this management consulting perspective, or did you kind of start in one area?
I started out actually producing content for a multinational that was doing content. We were doing computer manuals back in the days when they had computer manufacturing in Canada, and it hadn't been outsourced yet to the Southeast Asia. So when and I was always getting in trouble with my bosses, and it was because I was thinking in more business ways than them, and they found it very threatening. So there were a few times in a couple of different companies where I would say, if we did it this way, we could have this much percentage of, we could reduce our throughput by 75% if we did this and this and this. And if we use that size of paper instead of this and changed our manuals to this size instead of that, we could save this much in wasted paper. And it was just what comes naturally to me. So I didn't really realize it, but I was always thinking like a management consultant, because I was always looking for efficiency. To me, wasted time, partly because I have ADD, I think, wasted time, wasted energy, wasted money was always a crying shame. And so I was always looking for, how do I not have to do this? How do I get out of this repetitive task? How can we automate X? And usually there was X, Y, and Z that could be automated. And so I ended up, once I went into consulting, and it was actually a career consultant who said to me, you're operating way below your level. You should be the director, not getting flack from the director who doesn't know her. She's a micromanager and really didn't know how to direct, a company. She said, you should be the director, or you should go out on your own. And at that time, we had just hit the big .com bust, and there were no jobs anywhere, let alone competing with existing managers who were out of a job. And I just decided, what, I'm going to try my hand at consulting. And I've just been doing it ever since, because I love going in and solving problems. And I always have a new problem to solve.
And I think, that exactly makes sense, especially when it comes to content, because we really do, many companies really do struggle to have kind of that holistic understanding of the content that's in their enterprise or organization. Why is that so hard?
Well, there are a few reasons. And one is that we're not encouraged to do that. Everybody works in a silo. Communications works in a silo. The intranet team works in a silo. Marketing works in their silo. TechCom works in their silo. So everyone is just kind of doing their thing, and they're all using different tools. They all have different processes. And in many ways, they are different beasts. If you look at the way marketing communications runs, it's a very different rhythm than how TechCom runs.
Right.
But it's all content. And we need to have different ways of managing it. And they overlap, definitely they overlap, but we need different ways of managing each genre of content, if you will. And usually that's not appreciated, because when you think about how management understands or doesn't understand content, for them, it's all just like write, publish. There are two steps. There's writing and publishing. They don't realize that there are 35 steps, and step 33 is edit, right?
Yep.
And so if you said to them, you need a different tool, they wouldn't really get it. Now, if you said to them, oh, guess what? With your budgets and your finance, we're going to manage all of your really complicated finances, but you only get an Excel spreadsheet. They would be up in arms. They would go, are you kidding? Like you can't do a decent job in Excel. We need an accounting system or an ERP or an inventory management system or whatever it may be. But when you say we have this content production problem, so not just writing, a casual email or writing a casual business letter to someone or, updating your resume. I'm talking about production content. And we need something more robust than Microsoft Word. They go, well, why? So there's this real disconnect. They say content is king, but nobody really actually believes that, and they don't treat it that way. They treat it like Cinderella before the ball. Here's a broom, go sit in the corner, just like do your little sweepy thing, and the content magically appears on a website or in the product or whatever.
Right.
And I used to get really upset about it. And now I think I'm just at the age and stage where I let it wash over me and say, okay, in that way of, boys will be boys. Well, we'll say, execs will be execs, or devs will be devs. They don't know about content. They don't care about content. We have to care about content, and we have to be able to advocate for content. But if you want to advocate for content, you have to know what the potential is before you can advocate for it.
And is that why there's such a conversation around content operations today? Is there is kind of some recognition that we have to get a handle on this stuff?
Now, it's kind of interesting how this has come to be. So if you think about it, TechCom has been doing content operations for 25 years.
Yeah.
Anyone who has gone away from doing online help in word processing, and they've moved to a help authoring tool or a component content management system, they are doing content operations because they are doing stuff incredibly efficiently and reusing the heck out of everything and using variables and transclusions and every efficiency technique at their disposal to be able to produce content at scale. Now, nobody's really gotten involved. They don't really care about that unless, training is their bread and butter, or technical documentation is their bread and butter. However, once marketing started having the same problems, like we can't scale, we need to reuse, we're doing things in other languages or other markets, and we've got all these variants that are similar to each other, and we have to produce, and we've lost track and help. Then it became, we need to find a way to do this, and maybe Word documents or Excel spreadsheets is not the way to be keeping track of our content. And so, it's a kind of the age-old, marketing versus TechCom thing, or, front-end marketing versus enabling content or informational content. And, some things will never change, and that will probably never change for all sorts of reasons that have nothing to do with content, but more to do with organizational structure and who the cool kids are and who the favored child are and all that kind of stuff. But now, I look back 15 years ago, I was talking about content operations. Dean Barker was the one, he's a CTO of
Episerver, yeah.
Well, but they just got bought by somebody, so it's another
Optimizely, yep.
Yeah. So, but he was the one who said, I look back and, 14 years ago or 15 years ago, I was talking about content operations. I thought, I'm just going to look through my old slide decks and see when I first started talking about it. And it's about the same time. It was back just after the year 2000, we were talking about it. And, but it's one of those terms that if you say content operations and no one has a mental model to relate it to, it just goes in one ear and out the other. But now we have DevOps, design ops, research ops, all these things that have ops on them. And now we know what it means. So when you say content ops, people go, that's kind of like DevOps, but for content. Yeah. now it's easier to explain it. So before you were just some mad woman, waving, tilting at windmills, waving a flag in the wind and going, we're drowning over here. Come, there are better ways to do this. And now it's like, oh, you're going to give us an operational model. Oh, this is really interesting stuff. Well, let's talk about it. It's funny to watch it happen. And when you've been in the business as long as I have, you kind of chuckle about it, but there's a little bit of the kind of eye roll that goes on. It's like, okay, yeah, come on board the train.
Yeah,
You've already across Siberia. Now you're getting on at the good part.
It's funny. I was reading kind of your perspective on content operations on when you talk about this content quad model. And for me, I've always thought of content operations from that technical standpoint, how do you technically structure content and manage it? But you also talk about it from an editorial standpoint as part of that model that you've developed. And I actually didn't really kind of think that was part of it. I don't know why. I guess that's probably me separating the marketing kind of story away from the rest of the content types in the company. But I thought that was really fascinating.
Well, it's nothing in content exists in a vacuum.
Yeah.
If you want to do something different technically, then you have to do it different editorially, and vice versa. So how many, we used to write an article and you give it a title and you're done. And now you have to give it the search engine title. You have to give it the on-page title. You need to give it perhaps a browser title. And so now, we changed what we have to do editorially because we need it technically, or is it the other way around?
Right.
And you think about the short descriptions. And so, this is one of the things that I'm kind of dealing with the web developers right now. They said, well, we built you a custom article type for your blog. And it's like, okay, but where's the short description and where do I put the metadata? And they're kind of like, nobody's asked us this before. It's like, how can they not have asked you this? What happens when, when it's in a search engine? I don't want it to take the first paragraph because they're not going to get an idea from that first paragraph what the actual article is about. So I need to have something that I write that's very short, pithy, succinct, and gives people a reason to click. And I need a title for that as well. So, I've kind of, for now, been just using the titles that, having the on-page title and the browser title, the same thing, or the search engine title, but it's not ideal. I would like to have a longer, more descriptive title on page and a shorter, more SEO title for that purpose.
Right.
But, so it is very much connected together, and it also changes the processes. So there's a lot of change management. You have to learn to use new tools, and you have to learn to write in a componentized way, and you need to be able to keep consistency across your entire corpus because you're going to smash two things together and you want it to make sense.
When you think about all those pieces kind of trying to fit together, it can be kind of overwhelming, I think, for a lot of people.
Yes, I've learned over the years that you don't try to teach everybody everything in the same go. You have to stagger it. You have to stagger it, and you have to layer it. So that's been my MO when it comes to change management, is to say, okay, first of all, we need to have a governance model that is very explicit instead of implicit. And everybody has a governance model, whether you know it or not. Because if you go in and you go, okay, who do I give this to? And somebody points at Mary. Well, now we know that Mary is, the next person in the chain. And so you just kind of, and if you say, well, we have to program this into the CMS, you'll get the names of the people who should have to look at something, so you kind of are almost reverse engineering the governance model. But then once you have an explicit governance model, now you need to kind of start layering, okay, what are we going to learn first? We're going to learn the theory of it first, and we're going to practice writing in this way, even in your existing tools. And then we will take that governance model and layer it over top to say, okay, now when you finish this, now you will send it to so-and-so, and you won't, well, not send it to so-and-so, but you will send a link to so-and-so, and they will come and look at the document, and they will put some comments on it, and then you will do this. And then by the time you get all of that into place, you get your governance model, you teach the theory, they practice in their existing tools, which are, clunky, but they're practicing.
Right.
And practice every day for a month to make, to get it really kind of solidified. And then you start teaching the new tool. And then when they see the new tool and it's so much easier in the new tool, and you go, where have you been my whole life? It's a very different experience than having someone running out of the room crying because they feel overwhelmed because they were taught the new governance model plus the theory plus the tools all in one go.
Yeah, no.
Don't make that mistake anymore.
Thank you to the sponsor of the Content Matters podcast. Ingenix is a leading provider of agile content management solutions. You can use Ingenix CMS to manage and deliver modern websites, customer support portals, knowledge bases, and more. Ingenix software enables content reuse, true mobile and multi-channel content delivery, and insightful content discovery. To learn more about how Ingenix can support your content experiences, visit ingenix.com.
One of I think one of the other things that you talked about was this idea of the user experience of content, and that before you can start kind of chunking and tagging and optimizing content for delivery, you really have to understand what is the customer experience you're trying to create. And I find that most companies do that backwards.
Yeah, so here in the UK, we have a job called a content designer. And the content designer is like the UX person for content. So they look and say, do you actually need this content? And if you do need this content, then how do we form the content? What does it need to look like? Does it need to look like a procedure? Does it need to look like an article? Does it need to look like an invitation? They really kind of parse it down. And then you say, okay, well, now we can actually think about who is going to be reading this. What's the reading level? Are they going to be reading this on a phone or on the desktop? Are they going to be trying to, repair something while they're reading this? Do I need to, do it in a way that it can be read out because it's just easier for them to parse it that way? There are so many questions that you ask about how people will be using it, and then you create the content. Now, if they design a customer experience that is not going to support that, then chunking it that way is not going to give you anything.
Right.
So I think it's a bit of an iterative approach with the customer experience people to say, okay, so here's an example that I don't know why this one popped into my head. It's from a long time ago, but very succinct. Is you weren't supposed to print anything because you had to know which was always the latest version. This was for repairing helicopters. So you couldn't print it off because then it became an uncontrolled copy. And if somebody stuck it up on the board, it means that the latest version could become out of sync with this thing that you printed and stuck up on the board. So you couldn't print it, but you were expected to lie on your back on one of those slabs of wood on 4 wheels,
Yeah.
and wheel yourself under the helicopter and fix it. So how do you fix that problem? Right? So you can chunk the content all you want, but unless they figure out how they're going to be able to take that content and read it while they're underneath the helicopter is a different story. So, in the end, you have things like iPads, and you can use you can have it on the iPad because that's the latest version, and you can actually use the light from the iPad to see what you're doing as well. So, when you get those kinds of synergies happening between customer experience and content, then it makes the magic happen.
Right. So, what about personalization? How does that fit in?
Well, yeah, I don't think you can do personalization, particularly at scale, and it's certainly not in an automated way without
Right.
content operations. Because if you think about it, let's say you've got 1,000 customers, like let's keep it low, 1,000 customers, and those customers are asking questions, and they need different pieces of information to be served up to them on the fly. Well, do you have an army of people creating all this content, or do you componentize your content and have it all sucked up into one place? So if you think about the Amazon experience, this is a good way of explaining it. It's not exactly the same thing because they will use slightly different tools, but it is very efficient. They've got a good operational model when it comes to content. So you see a product on a screen, and it has an image, which probably lives in a digital asset management system. It has a title. It has a short description. It has a longer description. It has attributes. How long, how tall, how wide it is, how many, how much it weighs, et cetera, all those attributes. You've got reviews, you've got availability, you've got pricing that comes from a pricing tool, you've got availability that comes from an availability tool, and so on. You don't think about that when you go onto Amazon. They don't send you around to get all this stuff. They personalize this to you, and in the sense that it's an assembling of very specific information. So I go there and I search for, I don't know, coffee cups, and it serves me up coffee cups. So that's in a way a personalization. They didn't just serve up everything in their catalog, they served up coffee cups. And I could say, I want actually a teacup, and I want one of those baskets that sit inside the teacup so that I can put loose tea in and then pull it out and have a cup of tea that way. Okay, so I search for content on that, and it's giving me that personalization, and it's personalizing it by my country, what's available in my country, what's available in my language. There might be other things that, other ways that could be personalized to me. If you think about clothing, it might personalize to my size, my color, the heel height on the shoes that I want. All these things are elements of personalization. And it does that without even us thinking about it. In fact, if it didn't do that, we would go, something at Amazon is broken today.
Right.
Because we just expect it. And we expect it with, like Spotify or Amazon Music or YouTube Music, they all personalize for me. They kind of know my taste by what I've listened to before, and they often get it really wrong. The internet thinks I'm a high-earning young Black woman, evidently, because I can tell by the merchandise that they offer to me. But I get really good music out of the deal. So there's no incentive for me to change their perception. So they personalize the music to me. They never offer me grunge. They never offer me heavy metal. They never offer me country western or any of those things that I don't listen to. They offer me kind of pop and hip hop and Afro beats and various other things that I happen to enjoy. And so we expect that kind of service everywhere. And how they're doing it is by having content chunks. So those songs aren't on an album that they hand you the album and say, here, go find the song you want. That song is isolated, it's tagged up to the nth degree, and it's offered to people on some sort of an algorithm. And we have to do the same thing with text content as well. We need to offer up content in a way that makes sense to the person that we're trying to service. And to do that, you need to have content in some sort of a repository where it's ready to go and it's on offer. And when the company needs it, they can go and get it, basically, so when the CMS needs it, it just goes in and goes like, I need this thing that's about those red high heel shoes in size 8 for the UK patent leather. And it's like, and then it shows it to you. So you've got to be able to chunk up, tag up, optimize your content, and then deliver it in a way that the CMS needs to pull it.
Can you chunk it up too much though? Like, is there a case for not going to the absolute extreme, or do you need to do that?
No, you need to chunk up your content to the smallest usable unit, and not all content, but the content that you need. So for example, if you have a news feed, or like let's use this example. If you go on to, I think it's Marketing Pros, they have a whole bunch of people that write columns. So they run a kind of a blog feed, and you get whatever today's columnist is, but you can click on the columnist. So the name is a content chunk. You can see a list of all the things that columnist has published. So you see a list of titles. Those are all content chunks. Are you going to break that title up into separate words? No. Are you going to break up the name into, the columnist's name into separate words? No. But the smallest unit, reusable unit, is, in that case, is a name of the columnist. The smallest usable unit on that article is the title, and then the short description, and then the rest of it.
Right.
So you're going to have, those kind of layers that happen. So, a smallest usable chunk might be a paragraph. It might be a phrase. It might be a word. If you have products or department names, product names, department names, program names, those change. And you can see when they do these rebranding exercises, it's huge amounts of work, and it doesn't have to be. You should be able to go and change the variable, regenerate your build, and you're done. No?
Yeah.
Content perspective, there's the whole design perspective as well, which is different. But I've just seen companies struggle when they don't have to, because if you had a really efficient operational model, it is minimal work.
Right. So the other element of that is that's a lot of, like, I guess, marketing focused content, but there's also all of this technical content that an organization creates that could be used in that customer experience as well, right?
Oh, yes. We don't really separate it out into marketing and non-marketing material anymore. It's all marketing material, because the nature of what we do and how we do it, how we look, and how we research, and the things that we take into account are very different from what it used to be. If used to be, I don't know, you went to the car sales lot and you knew Mr. McCluskey from from the neighborhood, and mom and dad trusted him, and so that's where you bought your car from. And now you look up all the specs, and you're looking at gas mileage, and you're looking at, I just leased an electric car, and I had to look at the grid to find, is there anywhere to plug it in when I need it plugged in, or am I going to have to sit and babysit the car, or is it within walking distance to my flat? Like, you look up all sorts of odd things before you commit to a purchase. And I wrote a white paper a long time ago for Adobe about kind of personalization and so on, doing more with your content. And it was, I talked about the difference between the sales funnel and the purchase pretzel. and I didn't come up with that idea. That was, and I uh, attribute that to source, but that idea that you do some research and then you go on social media and you say to your friends, hey, does anybody else have a whatever this might be? And then they give you some more information, you go back and you do some more research, and then you kind of loop around, and then you start looking at, oh, they told me that, I want to buy this projector for the office. And the most expensive aspect of a projector isn't the projector itself, it's of the light bulbs. So I'm going to check the price of light bulbs now. And, you kind of go back around. And this happens all the time. You can probably recognize that, as I'm talking about it, you're going, oh yeah, last time I bought, name something in your home. Yeah, that's kind of how I did it, right?
Yeah.
I looked up this thing, and then I wanted to buy a new printer, and I wanted a wireless printer, and then someone said, oh, be careful, don't buy that brand because their cartridges are so expensive. And then you go, oh, cartridges, that's right. Now you go start, you are not paying attention to the marketing material, you're paying attention to the technical specs, which is how many pages does the cartridge get?
Right.
And how expensive are the cartridges, and how often you have to change them, and so on. And then you make your choice. So this distinction of, well, this is marketing material and this is not, I look at it as there's persuasive material and there's informational material. And so persuasive is, that's written in a very, kind of marketing way. It's not meant to necessarily inform, it's to make you feel something. This car makes you sexy, that kind of a thing. And you go like, okay, that's fine. And I really like that car because I like being associated with that car. But now let me just check the mileage, and let me check how much a new tire will cost, and let me check how much all of these things that matter to you, how much will that be? And then you make your decision.
Right. Yeah. I get that 100%. I am. That's my husband to a T.
There you go.
Absolutely. So the other element that I kind of was interested in, you talked about this idea of back end content, and that we spend more time producing and creating and spending our money on front end content, and then we're ignoring that back end content. Is that like the SEO type content and the metadata and everything? Is that what you're talking about?
No, I'm talking about marketing content. So all of the persuasive stuff, the campaigns, the people in the marketing department will produce these campaigns, or they send them out to agencies to produce, and they produce these campaigns, and they spend 80% of their content budget on these campaigns. And that's only 20% of any given website. The rest of the website is 80% of the content, but they only allocate 20% of the budget to it. And then they can't figure out why they're not getting the ROI on their content. And it's because you have this big disparity. Now, if you're, if you've got this, the marketing content, now it is true that you don't reuse it, and you don't, like you keep creating new campaigns and so on, and you're trying to persuade people to, or entice people to come to your site and to look at your product or whatever it may be. But then, people get into that other 80%, which is, think about like a phone. So you've got 10 pages of marketing content, this phone is sexy, it's got the latest blah, blah, blah. It has, name a bunch of keywords that people are going to be impressed with. And, here's how it stacks up against our competition. It comes in these colors, and, that's great. And then you kind of, for every 10 pages there, you have another 70, 80 pages of, here's the instructions, here's the operating manual, here's the warranty and guarantee, here's the battery life, here's the spec on the Bluetooth, whatever it may be, here's the camera spec. That's really popular right now. I want a better camera on my phone. Here's the storage. So there's all those things that are way more in volume than the marketing campaign.
Right.
And you're expected to produce all of that on 20% of the budget of what you produce for the marketing campaign. And now if you want to personalize, so if you wanted to really have a good experience, you would say, oh, when you come here, we can show you, we can give you links, or we can just pull in all this information about the camera and about the warranty and about all the things that people care about. But that means that all that back-end content has to be chunked and tagged and optimized and before it could be pulled in to this user experience. And at one point, I remember HP, this was a big departure for how things were done. They had some UX people came in, and they had it was a printer plotter. So this is one of those big machines that sits in an office. And I've been in an office where we would print off like roadmaps on this machine, a huge machine. It was meant for architects and people like that. So what happens? You get the machine, it goes into your office, and then something happens and somebody goes, where's the manual? I don't know, where's the manual? Who knows? It was lost 5 years ago, right? And then you're trying to figure out, well, how do we, I don't know, change a cartridge, fix a paper jet, whatever it might be on this printer plotter. So they, HP had come up with this idea of, here's the printer plotter, and this is the product page. And there you had everything from, here's all the specs about it. Here's the shiny marketing material, but here is a link to the user guide. Here's a link to the latest drivers that you might want to download. Here is the the link to the maintenance, find maintenance near you. Here's the link to, they had the link to absolutely everything. And I just went, this is amazing. This is amazing. Why can't everybody do it this way?
Yeah.
I'm sure, this was 10 years ago. So I'm sure they've, upgraded their web pages a bazillion times by then, but since then. But those are the kinds of experiences you can have when you treat all content equal and you decide that you're going to really pay attention to what users say they want to see.
Is that something that you think more organizations are kind of coming to terms with and actually understanding now that they are kind of paying more attention to the customer experience?
I think there are smart organizations that are doing that, but I don't think that's the majority. I think the majority are still in this kind of siloed situation where, marketing wants what marketing wants. We want to tell them about this stuff. It's like, yeah, but they want to know about this. I don't care. We have this to tell them. There's a lot of companies still in that situation. But the smart ones are realizing like, oh, we could get a competitive advantage if we take a slightly different approach and we start really analyzing and, doing our user research and asking customers, what are the top 5 things you want on your, want to know about this product before you buy it or after you buy it, or, during whatever stage of the customer journeys. This is where you get into omni-channel, understanding the different stages of the customer journey, and then making sure that the content for that stage of the journey, you're able to deliver at the appropriate time. Like, don't show me something that's a raw message for the product that I just bought that just broke down and I'm really annoyed with, because I'm likely to pack it up and send it back to you. Right? When I'm really annoyed, what I want is no nonsense, no frills, tell me how to fix it information.
Right.
And you have to know that I'm at that stage. I'm at the configure and failure stage. And I want, I need this kind of help. And so the whole marketing, the need for marketing is gone. That's past, put it aside, right?
Yeah.
You give that to me at stage 1 and 2 and 3 of the marketing journey, of the customer journey, but not at stage 4, 5, 6, and 7 of the marketing, of the customer journey. I'm sorry that, I hate to say this, but there are things that I don't know how to turn off in the system. So I get these little beeps and so on.
That's okay. So here's last question for you, because this is, but I will say this has been really fascinating for me because it's kind of made me broaden my whole view of how I think about content operations, and content strategy. Like the whole thing kind of opens up a whole other perspective on it that's been really great. I appreciate that. But so
My
what
reputation, Rahel, makes you question life. I don't know. I don't know
no,
about.
I think that's great. But so what excites you the most about working in content strategy, content operations today, and how do you see things evolve, and what's exciting you about what's coming down the pipe?
Well, what I found is that as the years have gone by, I've been given more and more and more complex projects. And each time I look at it, and I have this moment of panic of like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can do that. And then I figure out the way to do it. And then I think about it afterwards. I go, that was actually really easy. Why was I panicking about it? So I think for me, taking on those additional challenges, like, I said at the beginning, right now, I'm not even doing what they're calling content strategy. I'm doing information operations, and not information operations in the Wikipedia definition of like US military something or other. Not that at all. This is operationalizing information. So it's taking content and data and marrying it together so that you can present it on the fly and give people content with data points, up-to-date data points in them that are automatically refreshed. You can include data visualizations and so on and so forth, and being able to deliver them out to multiple platforms. Like for me, that's exciting stuff. And I've always been a content person. I've been a word nerd. It took me the first, I don't know, 15 years of my career to figure out that's really what I wanted to do. And now that I'm doing it, I'm just having so much fun. I can't see myself doing anything else. Would I want to be, as you get older, you kind of go like, do I want to take it easier and just work 3 days a week? Oh, these jobs don't do that. Do I want to become a teacher? Like, no, I just want to keep doing this. And so the things that are exciting to me are things like, machine learning and NLP and AI, artificial intelligence, and machine learning, and how does that affect things, and how do chatbots affect how we chunk information, and how do we make you right now chatbots are their own silo often. So
Yep.
how do you create an operational model that allows you to easily maintain the chatbot content too, yet feed the chatbot? So, again, it's like, well, we keep the content in a place that's suitable to, with like content, so that it's suitable for updating and maintaining, because that's where we lose a lot of our resources and time, and wasted time and energy is on maintenance. So how do we store it there but feed it into the chatbot where it's needed? So again, you come back to tagging and storage and optimization and so on. And so it's interesting. It's interesting. And I don't know what's going to happen in a few years from now, because every time you say, oh, there's this new thing, if I just learn it, I'll be up to date. And then it changes. and so since the year, I don't know, since the year 1998, I've been saying, just when I get this new thing under my belt, I'll be
Right.
up. And so, here we are 20 some years later, and I'm still doing that continuous learning thing to stay up to date.
Yeah, it's the beauty of this business, and you definitely sound like that you enjoy it, and you're very interesting to listen to because you're just very passionate about it all. So it's been a really great conversation.
Well, thank you. I am passionate about it, and that's when I get a little the motor mouth starts going.
Well, I appreciate you doing that with me today. Yes, thanks very much.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, it's been great.